So we're here on the top of Daf Lamed Hey. My Parva. The Mishnah had established that on top of the Beis HaParva, there's a mikveh, and that's where the Kohen Gadol would be tovel 5 times during the course of Yom Kippur. Actually, 4 times, because the first tevilah was done bechol, the other 4 in Kodesh, in the Azorah, on the top of the Beis HaParva. And yesterday, if you recall, we had a discussion about whether the Beis HaParva has the status of Kodesh, of the Azorah, and that was based on the fact that the Torah says, "V'rochatz es b'soro b'mayim b'mokom kadosh," and we came to the conclusion that even though gagos lo niskachu, but in the case of the gag of the Beis HaParva, that was sanctified, and the reason why is because the Beis HaParva was subterranean, and the gag of the Beis HaParva was exactly on plane with the Ritzpas HaZorah. So when they were Mekadesh anything at the level of the Ritzpas HaZorah, they were Mekadesh the gag of the Beis HaParva. Omer Rav Yosef, Parva Amagusha. Now, here I'm a little bit confused, honestly. The Gemara is trying to explain my Parva, why the name Parva. And the Gemara answers that Parva was a sorcerer, and his name was Parva. And that's called Amgusha. Gusha is a machashev. He was the one who built this lishka, this chamber, and therefore it's called on his name. His name was Parva. He was the sorcerer Parva. Now, all that I told you is in the name of Rashi. The Rosh in Masechet Midos adds that this Machashev was Jewish. I'm not sure if that makes me happy or sad. But the Ra'av, the Bartanura, writes that this Machashev actually built this chamber through sorcery, through Kishiv. Once again, I'm not sure if that makes me happy. Tosis Yontif says, how could it be possible that we Mekayim something in the Beis HaMikdash that was created through Kishiv? Furthermore, he says that the Bartanura seems to contradict himself, because there in the Masechet Midos, he mentions that this Machashev created this chamber through Kishiv, but here, on our Mishnah here in Masechet Yoma, he doesn't mention a word about Kishiv. So here we have an original interpretation of the Tiferes Yisrael. And I've mentioned many times that in Mishnais Kodshim or Yoma, the Tiferes Yisrael plays a major role. And remember in our introduction, we spoke about the different locations and structures in the Beis HaMikdash and the temple compound, and we always came back to the Tiferes Yisrael. So Tiferes Yisrael has a new take on our Gemara of Beis HaParva. Eina kavana l'kishuv mamish, ela shebna'ah bi'umnis gedola. He said that it was so clever, or such great talent, unusual talent, that it looked like it was magical, like it was an act of sorcery. And why was it so challenging? The water was on the lower level and subterranean, and he had to bring it all the way up to the gag of this lishka. How did he do so? Derech ovi haksol. Again, I don't know the physics of it, but if you have a very thick wall, imagine trying to navigate through the wall itself, like as if the wall has pores in it, and you can lift up the water through the pores and bring it up to the gag of the Beis HaParva. Tremendous achievement an unusual umnus, which is called kishuf, not because it was kishuf, but because it was like kishuf. So as Chatayani Maskir, I'm a great fan of art. And one of my favorites, if not my favorite, was Vermeer, if you ever heard of him. He lived about 5 centuries ago in Holland. Then it was called the Netherlands. And you should know, this is a historical fact. He was so incredible. They say that now that we have photography, that his paintings are supersede photography. And this is historically true that in his lifetime, people thought he was a magician, that it would be humanly possible to create the works of art that he created. So in the case of getting the mikveh going, up and running, and somehow lifting the waters from the ground through the Oviak Kosel, says it to Tiferes Yisrael, they called him the sorcerer, but he was not a sorcerer, he was an uman. Now it's interesting. Tosfos quotes the Aruch, Rabbi Nosson Aruch, who was back in the time of the Gaon, almost anyway. And the Aruch wants to know, why was this Machashev? And he doesn't know about the Tiferes Yisrael. He was 1,000 years before the Tiferes Yisrael, almost. He wants to know why was he making this kind of a subterranean mikveh? He says Chafar Mechila Tachas Karka Migdash. Unbelievable. He was what you would call, again, forgive me for using this phrase, which belongs to a different world. He was a peeping Tom. He wanted to know, he was very curious to know what goes on in the Beis HaMikdash. They wouldn't let him, probably he was a guy, they wouldn't give him entry into the Azor, but he had to know what went on to the Azor. So he dug underneath the Mikdash, Kidei sheyuchal liros es avodas. Now, it's not clear whether he wanted to see all the avodah or specifically the avodah the Kohen Gadol. Hirgishu chachamim b'chafira u'mitza'uhu. They discovered this person. Now, again, it seems like he was a machashev. Why would you call a chamber that was built subterraneously by a machashev who was curious to see the avodah of the Kohen Gadol? V'karo es halishka al shmo. Fascinating. He was motivated by the right intentions. He was curious to see the avodah. They didn't have like helicopters. You get a bird's eye view or cameras. If you can't see Shweki at a concert, so you look at the cameras or whoever your favorite singer is. Right? They didn't have that, so he had to dug underground, and they used that underground chamber that he created to hide as the Beis HaParva, on top of which there was a mikveh, and they called it Parva because he was Parva. That was his name. His name was Parva. The Rambam in Pirush HaMishnayos writes in Masechet Midos, "Oso Adam asachur b'koslei alishka k'dei liros es avodas hakohen hagadol." Now, so far, I would say that the Rambam is more or less identical with Rabbi Nosson the Baal HaAruch, except for one point. Vinera. Now, I'm not sure what he means by Vinera. Does it mean they murdered him? They put him to death? Maybe because he was a guy that snuck underneath the Mikdash and he had no right to do so? The Rambam doesn't say one way or the other. Perhaps he died when there was some sort of a cave-in. You dig underground, it's very dangerous. All sorts of terrible stories about miners they mine underground and so forth and so on. Anyway, he died. And the Rambam says we give him like a special status, like he's like a Haruge Malchus. He was Nerag al Kiddush Hashem. Why? Because he was killed because he was curious to see the avodah of the Kohen Gadol. And if he died as a result, we're going to call it on his name. It's a monument. It's a memorial to this individual whose name was Parva because he actually put his life at stake in order to observe and to fulfill his curiosity about the avodah of the Kohen Gadol. L'divrei kol hamefarshim, halishka atzma nikreis al shem oso parva. That parva who was a sorcerer, or again according to First Yisrael, he was a magical uman. Ulam harash. That's one of the Baliatosis, the Rash Mishans. It's quoted as saying, based on his commentary on the Mishnah and Midos, Shalishka Nikres Beis HaParva, Al Shem Oros HaPorim Shemolchu Sham. He says that, again, oblivious, as it were, to our sugya here in Yoma, that this was called Parva because what did this chamber function as? It was designated for Melichas Oros Haporim. They would salt the hides of the cows, the oxen that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash. And every single lishka, says the Rash Mishans, is given a name that that reflects its function. Like, for example, Lishkas Hamadichim. That's where they did the Hadocha and they cleaned out the innards, the kishkis of the animal before it went on the Mizbeach. Or we have a Lishkas HaMolchim where they kept the salt because every carbon had to have salt. Lishkas HaMel. Here also, the name of the Lishka has to reflect its masa, what it was done with. What was done there. And this was the process of Ibud Oros Haporim, through salting. So now, the word parva comes from the word par, because that's where they brought the parim in order to salt the hides of the parim. However, he says, on top of the Beis HaParva, they built a mikveh for tefillah purposes, and that they called on the name of this machashev. He doesn't tell you exactly what the name of the mikveh was, but parva is the name of the lishka itself, not the mikveh on top of the lishka, but Beis HaParva, because that's where they took the parim of the parva, and they salted the hides of the parim. And when our Gemara says Amgusha, referring to the machashev, that's not referring to the name of the chamber itself, which was called Parva because of the parim, but rather the name that they designated for the mikvah on top of the Beis HaParva. And that name was identical to the name of a machashev. Again, the Rash Mishans doesn't go into detail about what kishuv, did he create the mikvah through kishuv? What did he create through kishuv? But the Beis HaParva itself was not, according to the Rash Mishans, was not called by that name because or in honor of the machashev, but rather reflects the function of the Beis HaParva, which is for the Molichas Oros Haporim. Irsu Sadid Shel Butz, They took a curtain made of linen and they stretched it out in such a way that the Kohen Gadol could go into the mikvah without being exposed to the eyes of the spectator. Maishna shel butz. Why did they choose linen? It could have been any curtain, could have been made of wool or any other substance. Amrav Kahana Kadeshi Yakir Shavodas Hayom the Big Day Butz. That today's special avodos, namely the special unique avodos of Yom Kippurim, have to be implemented while the Kohen Gadol is wearing the linen garments, Big Day boots, and that was reflected in the boots, meaning the linen of the curtain that they set up in order to separate his mikvah from the eye of any passerby. Now, honestly, I don't understand what this concept of yakir means. In the Hebrew translation, I don't know if anybody has the English, he writes that yakir means yazkir, to remind him. And the whole thing makes absolutely no sense. First of all, Kohen Gadol has to be reminded of what a child knows, that the avodah of Yom Kippurim, l'fnai v'l'fnim, has to be implemented when he's wearing Big Day Lavan. Remind him of that, what he forgot. And secondly, furthermore, why is he going into the mikvah? He's going into the mikvah in order to don Big Day Lavan. He's wearing Big Day Zav. How could he have possibly forgotten Big Day Lavan when he's about to wear these clothes in order to do the avodah? Strange. So in the Masechet, he says the following. It's a pretty long piece. I underline, but I realize I need to underline a little bit more. So just give me a minute. I'll give you the highlights of this long piece over here. He says, he says the following, that this Gemara of Rav Kahana is coming to be Machadish. What was posheting before Rav Kahana is that when the Kohen Gadol begins his avodah of the day and he goes into mikvah, he's taking off his Big Day chol, then it's a davar pashut that the curtain should be made of boots, because from the Big Day chol, what kind of begadim is he putting on to begin his day? Big Day zav. So he has to be reminded that, my friend, right now you're doing the avodas hatomid, etc., which is common to every day of the year. You will wear Big Day zav, but you should know. Let me remind you that ultimately you're going to be wearing Big Day boots. The chiddush of Rav Kahana then is that even with regard to the tefillah shniya, when he takes off his Big Day zav and he puts on his Big Day bad, paradoxically, we need this curtain of boots to remind him that the avodas hayom is the Big Day boots. B'tefillah shniya, shenases al manas lahachlif Big Day zav b'Big Day lavan, yesh lomar de lo yiteh. He's putting on Big Day Lavan. He's going to make a mistake. You got to remind him to put on Big Day Lavan. The whole reason he's going into the mikvah is to prepare himself for this change in the garments from Big Day Zav to Big Day Lavan. The Chidesh Rav Kahana, shegam b'tefillah shniya, mazkirin lo sheyesh godim yuchadim lavodas hayom. it's almost like a low plug alof. Since we know, and it makes absolute sense intuitively, that with Tvila Rishona, where he's about to dawn his big day Zah, he needs a reminder that down the line, after he finishes the morning service, the morning avoda, he's going to be wearing big day boots. And that's the 4 big day love. That makes intuitive sense. Comes along Rav Kahana and he says you should know that since we're setting up a curtain of boots, right? The sadin shel boots for the tefillah rishona, we're going to require the same material, the same sadin shel boots for the tefillah shniyah. Reminding him that, my friend, you're going to come out of the Beis Hamikdash, you're going to change your clothes, and again wear the big day. So you should know that anytime you go into the Kodesh Kodashim, you're going to be wearing big day boots. Now, in Shachris, the Mishnah says the value in mana of the big day lavan that he wears the first time he goes in with the Ketores is equal to 18 mana, and then in the afternoon he wears big day lavan that are valued at 12 mana. And then the Mishnah goes on to tell you that all told, between his big day lavan of the morning and that of the afternoon, we are spending 30 mana. Both sides. Are you in the mood for a little bit of a quiz? Again, on Zoom, this is very hard because you'd have to turn on your microphone. I'm going to quiz you. The first answer you don't have to bother giving me. I know the answer. How much is 18 plus 12? It's 30. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. Why did the Mishnah bother telling me that the sachakol of the money, the amount of money that they spend on the big day lavan, both in the morning begadim and in the afternoon begadim, is 30 money? You just finished telling me that the money in the morning cost 18 money. I'm sorry, the big day lavan in the morning cost 18 money. The big day lavan in the afternoon cost 12 money. Now you have to tell me a Mishnah? I mean, we know the Rebbe was very stingy in ink, on ink, so to speak, figuratively, in writing the Mishnah. He has to tell me that 18 plus 12 is 30. And the reason I'm quizzing you is that when I saw the Gemara's answer to this question, I banged my head and I said, Burzon, why couldn't you come up with that answer? So I'm wondering if you gentlemen could come up with the answer that I couldn't come up with, which the Gemara is going to come up with. You know, I need the Tana to tell me that 18 plus 12 is 30. All right, I didn't see anyone answering my challenge, so I'm just going to go on. So the Gemara answers, the Mishnah wants to teach us the Bitsir Bihani Lo Navid, that we're not allowed to spend less than 30 money. Now, what does that mean? We can't spend less than 30 money. It means that the total bill for buying these two types of linens, coming from two different countries and two different prices, the total bill comes up to 30. But I don't care how you organize the number 30. We don't mind if he has less than 18 for the morning linen and more than 12 for the afternoon begadim, as long as the total is 30. So what the Mishnah is doing by adding the number 30, it's coming lafuke. You would think that there's a minimum of 18 for the morning, 18 mana, and 12 for the afternoon. Less than 18 for the morning, less than 12 for the afternoon just simply won't do. No, less than one. We couldn't care less. As long as the bottom line is 31. Again, it's a strange halacha. So therefore, Batzer, let's go over the Gemara. Batzer mihani lo navi. We cannot spend less than 30. The sum total, after he adds it all up, is got to be 30. And you can't get more than 30. For example, if the Kohen Gadol wants to, like Steve mentioned yesterday about his mother making the b'gadim, can't spend more than 30 mana unless he takes it out of his own pocket or his mother's pocket. But habatzir mehani utfei mehani. But if, let's say, the Kohen Gadol sticks to the number 30, so the Trumas Halishka is willing to pay 30 money, and he decides that one of his two sets of begadim, whether it be the morning or the afternoon, should be less than that value of 18 or 12. Let's say, for example, the Masifta gives the following scenario. He wants to spend 17 mana for the big day Lavan. How much is he going to have to spend for the morning big day Lavan? How much is he going to have to spend for the afternoon big day mana? 13. Got to be 17 plus 13, and the sum total always has to reach the number 30. That's what the Mishnah wants to teach us. I don't care if you dip below the 18 in the morning and you only spend 17. It's almost like we give you, how do you say in English, a taktiv? You can spend an allotment, right? Is there a better word? And the allotment for the Kohen Gadol for his two sets of big day Lavan is 30 mana. That's what he's going to get from the Trumas Halishka. He can divide it up in any way he pleases. However, this leads to a major controversy of the Rishonim. And Rabbeinu Eliyakim and the Rosh and the Mishnah Lamelech, a whole group of Achronim say, Hu adin sheyachol lifchos mishel arvis los mishel shachos. If, let's say, he wants to dip down for the big day Lavan in the afternoon to 11, and he wants to jack up the big day Lavan of the morning to 19. 19 plus 11 is 30, and that's fine. And you're talking about a lot of big guns over here. You're talking about Rabbeinu Eliyakim and the Rosh are Rishonim. All right, the Mishnah Melech is an Achron. Comes along the Sfas Emes. Now, I will say the Sfas Emes lived in our century, in the last century. And he says that you're not being fair to read Rashi carefully. Because Rashi says, Yochol lifchos mishel shakris ula hosif shel bein harbayim. Rashi has a one-way street. Rashi's willing to tolerate the Kohen Gadol going down to, let's say, 17 for the morning begadim and going up in the afternoon to 13 begadim, but not the opposite. V'hainu, and if my reading of Rashi is correct, says the Sfas Emes, mishum shehu hayamekuval biyadav shetzarach habgadim shel bein harbayim sheyushavim l'chol hapachos shnei masar mana. We're giving a bad rap to the second gadim, and it's get out of hand. You can imagine a situation where if you're allowing him to dip below that minimum of 12 mana for the Bein Harbayim big day Lavan, it can go down and down and down. He can end up spending 1 mana and 29 mana for the morning. He says, no. What the Mishnah is telling us is that as far as defending and protecting the integrity and the honor of the second set of God, we need at least a serious amount of money, a minimum of 12 months. So if you want to shift things around because you got the 30 mana taktiv from the Trumas Halishka going, then what you're allowed to do is beef up the afternoon begadim, big day Lavan, at the expense of the amount of money you're going to spend on the morning begodim. You want to go beyond that, you'll have to take it out of your own pocket. You've got an allotment of 30 months. That's where it's going to max out if you want to build a tzibur and you're not willing to take your own bank account. Ein lemayit b'shovi bigdei lavan shel bein arba'im. That's the sfasem. Sfasem aritva, who ditfei eitzel shachris. What he means is, says Ritva, at the expense of the bein arba'im, he could jack up the linen of the boken. And that means that the Ritva is explicitly outspoken against the Sfas Emes. Again, the difference of many, many centuries. Ulam ein lamayit b'shovi bigdei lavan shel shachris. Ula hosef es masha piches mishovi bigdei lavan shel bein arba'im. Punkfaket, the exact opposite of the Sfas Emes. We are going to allow you to beef up the price of the chakras at the expense of bein arba'im, because the begodim shel chakras are that much more important than shel bein arba'im. What did he do with the begodim bigdei lavan of bein arba'im? He took out the kaf of the makta from the Kodesh Kadoshim, so it wouldn't remain there for next year. It's a sloppy job. It's a matter of cover for the Kodesh Kadoshim. But in terms of avoda, the avoda in the Kodesh Kadoshim, which brought about the kapara for Klal Yisrael, was done in the morning. So jack up the morning if you like, and within your taktiv, you can take the morning begodim and let's say let it be 20, and reduce the value of the afternoon to 10. That's allowed, but not the other way around. So we have three shittas here. One sheet is that of Rabbeinu Eliyakim, the Rush, and later on in history of the Mishnah Melech, that in either direction, the Kohen Gadol had the flexibility of jacking it up at the expense of the other one, in any direction. Then we have the Sfas Emes, who says we have to protect the interest and the honest of the bein arba'im and upgrade that, and the minimum mana for this is 18 mana. You want to subtract from the morning and beef up the afternoon, that's fine. Not less than 12 in the afternoon. Comes the Ritva, he says, nay, you could borrow from the afternoon and reduce in order to beef up the money for the shel boker, because that's the Iker HaVoda. Shekpida Torah, Sheshivri Abgodim Shel Shachris Yu Lefachos. I'm sorry, I added a word. Yu Yikarim, the Torah demanded that we guarantee that the begodim of chakras will be more valuable than shel bein arba'im bit shlish, a minimum of 1/3, which means if you subtract 18 from 12 from 18, you get 6, right? And 6 times 3 is 18. So the increment of the big day shachar over the big day bein arba'im is 1/3. And that has to be always guaranteed, that minimum of 1/3 of an increment for the morning begodim, which are Yikarim Yoser. And therefore, if you want to go up from 18 in the morning begodim to 20, stay within your taktiv of 30 mana. But if you want to reduce the price spent on the big day lovin of the morning at the expense of the big day lovin of the afternoon, such that now the discrepancy is less than 1/3, meaning that the big day lovin do not have it over the big day lovin shachar, over the big day lovin shel bein arba'im by at least 1/3, that you're not allowed to do. What would be, according to the Ritva, if he would take out of pocket extra money in order to guarantee, although he beefs up the price of the bein arba'im big day lovin, but again, he's staying within his allotment. Well, that's not good, because if you're staying within your allotment, the very moment that you jack up the 12 on the bottom to 15, then you have to subtract 3 from the morning, and you end up with 50. That would get allowed. But if he would add out of pocket money to cover the subtraction from the Trumas Halishka money and spend extra money so that he continues to maintain the what's the word in a race? You know, the amount you're ahead of the guy behind you by 1/3. That would be acceptable. All right, I went a little bit overtime today. Just wanted to finish this very short sugya about how much money we spend on the big day love. But again, everyone agrees that fundamentally the big day love and boker are more important than that of the afternoon. That's where he did the Iker Avoda Lifnai V'Lifnai. Have a great day. Thank you so much. We'll continue Menachas.